Welcome, everyone. My name is Jason Sachs. I'm the CEO of Positive Coaching Alliance. We're thrilled to have you here, which will be a great conversation with B.J. Callaghan, who is the head coach of Nashville Soccer Club of the MLS. B.J. also served as a former U.S. men's national team coach and was with the team during the last World Cup run and even some of the tournaments following that. So excited for this conversation. A couple of housekeeping items. Feel free to drop questions in the chat in the Q&A function, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can throughout the conversation. We will be recording this, and we'll be able to send out some follow-up recap and recordings that you can share with your network. And without further ado, let's welcome BJ into the conversation here. BJ, how you doing?
Good, Jason. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for joining us. And we just saw a World Cup game end in a 1-1 draw, and now we have a little time off to chat here. But first of all, thanks for joining us, and it's going to be a fun conversation here. Um, I guess the first question is, you're an MLS coach, you're an MLS team right now in the midst of the World Cup. What's your schedule look like these days?
Yeah, so actually we had right at the end of I would say our season kind of took a pause when the World Cup base camps sort of started. Right towards the end of May, everybody had a mandated 3 weeks off. In fact, we're hosting Japan at our facility where they're base camping. And so we just resumed training on Monday. I can tell you that a lot of the training times are built around some of the highlighted games. We have guys from different countries, so there's certainly, everyone is rooting for their country, but also angling to try and get me to change training times so that they can watch. So this one works out quite well that we have Ghana later, we have England later, those things. But yeah, so we're back in sort of a training mode, kind of. It's not necessarily like preseason, but a 3 week, 4 week period of training before we resume play.
Awesome, awesome. Well, since obviously World Cup fever here in the country, let's just start there, right? You had the opportunity to be on the staff in the 2022 World Cup, so maybe just like really high level, the experience being at a World Cup. What does that mean? What did it mean to you as getting to that highest stage as a coach? Maybe a little insight into our audience of what that experience is like.
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing that you come back with out of the World Cup is the just how big the event is. And that fills you if you're representing your country and your national team, like I had the opportunity to, like, you feel a massive amount of pride. I would say that's the first and foremost. And kind of you don't, I think you understand it, but maybe you don't really comprehend it until it's kind of there and over. And you're like, wow, it's a huge, huge event. From just the amount of time spent together to obviously the pressure of the games and the magnitude and the global scale. But then I think it also kind of boils back down to like it's the ultimate competition and you're competing for the ultimate trophy. There is pressure to that. But it kind of feels like any other team, right? You bring together a team, you've worked so hard for 4 years together, and it all kind of comes down to those three group stage games to see if you can advance and then keep going. But for me, I think it's just a time to you get an opportunity to realize that like it brings everyone together. A lot of people might root for their Premier League team or root for their hometown MLS team, NWSL team, whatever it is, but then everybody comes together as to root for America or whatever team you root for. And you can realize like how powerful it can be to bring people together and the amount of like responsibility and pride that you have as you're doing it.
Yeah. Speaking of pride, so many of the players that are on this year's roster were a part of that team as well. So, what was it like for you watching the game on Friday night? And yeah, what was going through your mind?
I was just like kind of like I don't want to say it's like a proud, like you're really proud of the guys, right? When we had them in the beginning in 2019, there was a big shift. And it was really, they were young players. A
Yeah.
lot of them were in their early 20s, late teens. And you kind of worked together and you built this group, and we were supported by some really good veteran players as well. And that was kind of the first taste So you really just kind of an excitement of where it was going to go for the next 4 years. And then it all came together in that Paraguay game. And yeah, just excited. I mean, I would probably acted like a true fan more than I than I thought I was going to, but that's just kind of, I think, the emotion that comes out, and just how great a performance that group put in front of an amazing crowd. And now, they have to do it again, but you see sort of the culmination, and when you know it from the inside, just the amount of work that those players put in, how much they care, and then you keep peeling back, like the staff and the people at the soccer federation and all the people behind the scenes. It's a huge, huge, huge undertaking for 4 years to get it. And I thought, the performance when the lights went on was one of the best performances of any U.S. soccer team ever.
That's awesome. Well, I know everybody's excited for this Friday's game, and we'll get back to some World Cup stuff later in the conversation. But I want to, our audience today is, youth soccer coaches, youth sports coaches, right? Parents, high school coaches, all different levels. We have organizational leaders. We have folks from MLS next teams, all across all aspects of it. So this conversation is really going to center around coaching tactics, the landscape of youth soccer. I know you're a sports parent with kids that are playing multiple different sports, so I want to talk a little bit about that. But I think what's really interesting is like you are coaching, coaching a World Cup. Teams having a great season thus far, but maybe telling people the path a little bit. So, playing college soccer, but then what the path was, maybe just briefly an overview of sort of how you've got to where you are today.
Sure. I mean, it's uncomfortable for me to talk about myself, so I'll keep it short, and no one wants to hear about it. So, yeah, like you said, I kind of played all sports growing up, and then I went to college, played soccer at a small Division III school. I probably was average at best, and so after that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I ended up being an assistant at the college that I played for, which I tell people was one of the hardest jobs I ever had because, you know, in November and December, I was finishing playing with some of my best friends, and then I was telling them to run and do stuff in preseason the next year, and so you were really coaching your peers at that time. But I had some great little, mentors that kind of pushed me to do it. And, from that point, I sort of had a unique pathway, I would say, because I wasn't a great soccer player. So a lot of times the guys that get to the professional ranks have been pro soccer players. So I was not that. Instead, I started to coach in the youth game,
Yeah.
and the college game, kind of on parallel paths, right? You would do both to sort of continue to make ends meet and do it. So I coached youth, started around U10, U12 soccer teams, boys and girls, and then at the same time moved into the college game. Left Ursinus College, moved to St. Joe's University, and kind of went through that path. Ended at Villanova
Yeah.
University, and continued to coach in the youth soccer space. That ended up being at like FC Delco. U.S. Soccer created an academy program, U.S. Development Academy, and so I did those two. And then I would say right around 2012 was kind of the first fork in my career path. The MLS Academy just started for the Philadelphia Union. And it was no, I'm not kidding. There was 8 players that started with this group that we had full time. And so I was approached to leave the college game, leave Villanova University, and would I take this kind of, rollover to join the Philadelphia Union Academy? And I thought to myself, like, yeah, like to get to just coach at one place for 10 months a year was, like heaven for me. So I was like, this is an amazing experience. And it was, and that's grown tremendously from the starting point. And then after about 2 years there, I was asked to move into the Philadelphia Union's first team staff, and then that's kind of the next pivot where I left the youth, academy, college space and moved into the professional space full time, and that happened in 2014. Worked at Philadelphia Union until 2019, the beginning of 2019, when I was approached to join the men's national team. And so sort of from there, went from the men's national team into getting after the Copa America tournament in 2024, I believe it
Yeah.
was 2024. That I was had the opportunity to join Nashville. And so for me, that's kind of a pathway, but my experience is literally from the grassroots,
Yeah.
coaching 9, 10-year-old boys or girls. It didn't matter, coaching women or men's college soccer, coaching in the academy, and coaching sort of kind of different levels of the professional game. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I really wanted the audience to hear that because I think you're going to have such a unique perspective on all different levels of the game. And so I do want to start at that youth level and whether it's local rec or, as you're getting more competitive, travel soccer clubs, what should we as coaches and organizational leaders when we're thinking about some of those youngest phases of the game, what has to be at the front and center of that programming and how we're scheduling kids and what is like the ideal that we have in a youth soccer environment?
It's a good question. And listen, I'll preface this with sometimes I have some crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where you can get in innovation and maybe some, different thoughts. So some of these ideas may sound a little bit off the wall, but for me, it's really about meeting each age group where they are at developmentally. And I think a lot of times as adults, I don't even know if this is a word, but like we adultify the game.
Hmm.
And because we know what it looks like, so you can watch a World Cup game, you can see what it looks like. It's 11 versus 11. There's two goals. There's all these rules, those type of things. But a 6-year-old has no idea what it's supposed to look like, and they shouldn't. And so for me, I think if I'm looking at myself as someone who's trying to create that ideal environment, I'm looking to bring it together with people that want to teach the kids how to love the game before they teach them how to play the game, if that makes sense. So getting them to fall in love with being together, being with a ball. And here's kind of like what I'll say, like, and I speak to soccer specifically, but it could probably be related to other sports. Every player, my kids itself, that come off the field after a soccer practice or a soccer game, they get in the car and you either ask them or they tell you, and it goes about how many goals did you score? Right? That's what people want to do. Well, unfortunately, when we only put one ball and one goal, two goals on the field, like it's a low scoring game. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's like when I talk about them loving the game before you teach them, like I look at it like put 6 goals out on the field and
Yeah.
put every kid with a ball and let them score and like let them come in your car and say, Dad, Mom, Grandmom, Grandpop, I scored 75 goals today. And like of course an adult we say, yeah, of course you did, like
Right.
whatever. But
Yeah.
that's the love that I'm talking about. That then they want to come back again. And that's what that lowest or that youngest age group, like
Yeah.
they have to fall in love with being part of the sport before they learn how to throw the ball in and keep their back foot down. And it's
Right.
like that stuff matters, but it doesn't matter until they have motor coordination and those type of things. That
Yeah.
I always say like 5 and 6-year-old kids, most of them are the most selfish little humans that run around because that's where they are developmentally. So give them all a ball so that they don't fight over the ball. Give them all a goal so that they don't fight over the goal, and they'll all fall in love and they'll all be part of it and let them all sort of play. And then I think it goes then step by step from there. As they get older, you can start to make the game look and feel more like the game. But a lot of times, I believe the environment that we create right now is about the competition side, so it has to look like the sport.
Yeah.
And that's the part where we say we're teaching them how to play the game, right? The rules and this, but we miss over this idea that hey, like we want them out there running around playing, competing with their teammates, but really at the end of the day, like getting them to fall in love with like the fun parts
Yeah.
of the game.
I love that. And PCA, we talk, in one of our workshops for parents, we talk about the three stages, and the first stage is that romantic stage. And I think you're exactly right that we have moved the culture of it has moved them from the romantic stage to the technical stage so quickly. And so
Yeah.
either we don't give them the chance to fall in love, or they haven't fallen in love enough that they're going to stick with it when things start to get like a little too structured or scheduled. And which I want to shift a little bit to what you brought up of like then getting to that competition. And I think a massive conversation across all youth sports right now is how do you balance the practice and free play versus the games? And I think the over tournamentification of youth sports. So how do you think about that? And I think there's two things, right? I want to get your take on it, but then also it's also like a system. And so it's really hard to like, well, we're not going to do it when everybody else is doing it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll be on the extreme side, and I think we
Yeah.
see it across all sports. Like, it's funny. Now even in the MLS, right? If we play one game a week and we train 5 days a week.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's a good, I don't think that's a appropriate, for a young player,
Right.
but there should be definitely some version of like a 3-to-1 training. You want to train more than you're playing. And I think that's super important. However that ratio works out. I don't know the exact number, but for me, there has to be spent way more time in the training environment. The training environment can be dynamic, but that's where they're allowed to try things, fail, have success, these little ups and downs without really the pressure of trying to compete. Um, and I think you speak about it in soccer, but then you look at it from like I love basketball. So
Yeah.
I look at like the evolution of the NBA right now. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like you're seeing a large European influence come in, and these
Mhm.
players like Doncic and stuff are so big and so strong, but they're so technically gifted. And then you look at their development, and it's like they kind of have this model of like they practice the fundamentals 4 or 5 days a week and they play once on the weekend. And maybe here in the United
Right.
States, we've switched that where we have a lot of whether it's AAU basketball tournaments or youth
Yeah.
soccer tournaments, it doesn't name the sport.
Right.
It's all
Yeah.
about this tournament play.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and I laugh because in soccer, you go to, there's studies been done in soccer that if you play a 90-minute soccer game, you might be actually be on the ball like 3 total minutes.
Yeah.
So imagine if you played 4 games on a weekend, you were on the ball 12 total minutes, and now you get 2 days off and you only practice, once or twice a week. It's really out of balance. So I
Yeah.
think there needs to be a shift for sure back to this, practicing um this practice model where you're practicing 2 or 3 times a week, and again, I think it's at age appropriate levels,
Yeah.
and playing one time on the weekend.
Yeah. Well, with that what goes along with that 12 minutes of on the ball is also then you like probably drove 4 hours and you got a hotel and you're doing all that
Yeah.
aspect of it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, advice for parents on how to figure out when their child is ready to make that jump to, whether it's a local rec program or, okay, now we're going to try to step up or go to a tryout. Like, what should parents be looking for, and how do you make sure that it's the child that's really driving that interest?
Yeah, I think as you sort of look at like if you're looking from let's call it the rec to the travel, is do you have a child who gravitates when they go to do things on their own, playing that sport, right? Right.
Yeah,
So like what do they personally just gravitate to? I think it's the most important. So if you have a driveway and your son or daughter gravitates to playing the going basketball to shoot hoops, that's probably the signal that's telling you that they lean towards playing hoops. If
yeah,
they're in the driveway and they're screwing around with a soccer ball or something, it maybe tell you that they like soccer a little bit more if you have a basketball hoop in your driveway.
yeah.
So I think in the early stages, that kind of tells that moment. I think once you sort of get to the travel level,
Hmm.
um, I, I say this with my own children. If you are one of the top 3 players on the team, then it's probably time to move teams.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
if you're one of the bottom 3 players on the team, and you have to be honest, sometimes you have to have hard conversations, but
yeah.
then you should probably move teams. And if
Right,
you're
yeah,
somewhere in the middle, then you're probably at the appropriate level. And I think that's, uh, really kind of a good barometer. And I think most people can walk out on the field and see who are maybe the 2, 3, 4 best players on the team, and maybe
yeah.
two of the 2 or 3 to struggle. And again, that doesn't mean that you can't reach your goals or you
Right,
can't achieve some of your goals. That just means at the time of on the timeline that your son or daughter is on at this moment, the ideal development area is
yeah,
going to be probably, at that appropriate level.
yeah, yeah. So when you're thinking about parents and their child, like having this conversation of figuring out like to make that tradition, whatever it might be, how can organizations, soccer clubs, do a better job, or what is it on the soccer club of like how do we set better expectations, right, of what they're getting into, just so then everybody's on the same page, they know what they're signing up for. So what are some tips that you have for organizations on how they can do that?
I think twofold. One is being very clear internally in your organization as to where you fit in the ecosystem. and being super comfortable where you fit in the ecosystem. So if you are a rec league program, then be the best programmed, best supported rec league program, and be super comfortable doing that. And if you are a mid-tier travel soccer team, then be the best environment for those kids. And then the ones that are better, push them to move on. And, other ones say, hey, we have another program for you here. I think that's, it's kind of like school, right? Like a little bit,
Yeah,
like, hey, if you put them in certain levels of academic rigor or
for
less levels
sure.
of academic rigor, it's just kind of how it works. Um, the other part, the external part of the organization, and I think this is a challenge sometimes,
Mm,
is to lean into the parents.
mm,
Um, parents are a key piece of the ecosystem. And the more you lean in, the more you include, the more you communicate, I think the more you build partnerships and can have good, honest conversations, supportive conversations. You can learn more about the player, you can learn more about the family. And I think a lot of times we put up these barriers of like, I don't, you know, talk to the parents, whatever. And, you know, I I caution that because we do know we've seen stories, we have it that sometimes parents right after a game or they get upset, but I still want to believe in the good of people. And 99% of the people are good interactions, and then these anecdotal one-off stories are kind of the ones that get told and magnified. But I do think if you are a club, if you are an organization and you bring people in at their younger ages and this becomes the norm,
mhm.
then you start to normalize how people are supposed to have like
Yeah,
conversations with leadership at organizations or coaches or players and those type of things. And then if that's the culture, then people
yeah.
just start falling in. And after a year or two, whoever joins your club, they just the culture is modeled.
Yeah, yeah. On a related note, like as we're thinking about how we're, shaping our child's journey through sports, I want to talk a little bit about specialization and playing multi-sports. And you have kids that are, playing different sports. And so I think twofold. One is um, in general, like the benefits of playing multiple sports and also trying to juggle, if you're playing for a travel soccer club, you're most likely heavy season in the fall, maybe some indoor or training in the winter, then back to heavy season. You might be playing lacrosse, you might be playing basketball, you might be like, how do you juggle multiple sports during the same season? That side, and then also maybe like your thoughts on coaches trying to be a little more flexible in allowing kids to play multiple sports at younger ages.
Yeah, so I think you have both sides. You have the organization coach side and you have the parent player side. And so
Yeah,
for me, I want to first make a very blanket statement that I think playing multiple sports is a great thing.
yeah,
And being exposed to multiple sports is a great thing. Um, but I also think we are in an era that you can't do it all of the sports. And so for me as the player and the parent side, when I wear that hat, I think at young ages it's you can kind of do it all.
yeah,
As you get a little bit older, whether that's somewhere in that 10, 11, 12, I think you have buckets. And if you say, hey, I really love my primary sport to be soccer, my secondary sport to be basketball, and maybe a third sport to be whatever, it doesn't matter, swimming, whatever it
yeah,
is, then that's how the time should be spent, right? And so you should, if you have a conflict, you would pick your primary sport.
yeah,
Now, if I put my coach hat on and my organizational hat on, I also think it's really important. Again, this is goes back to what I said earlier, where you are in the ecosystem. So
yeah,
if you are just your community travel soccer program that plays in, a sanctioned league, then I think it's really important that you say, okay, the fall is our primary season. We would expect people to play this as our primary sport, but
yeah,
hey, if the kid is a basketball player, I know he might miss,
yeah,
right? But then in the winter, we go down a little bit and
yeah,
we allow our basketball players to play more and, do the soccer. And then in the spring, we kind of pick a middle ground and, our baseball players or our other players, they do those things. So it's kind of this partnership of being flexible. Now, if we're higher up in the kind of the levels, then I think
yeah,
I think it changes a little bit,
yeah, for
and
sure.
that's okay because as the levels go up, the amount of players that are looking to play different sports is smaller.
Yeah.
And so for us, I think, again, like we had it at Philadelphia Union when I was with the academy, like they still do. It's like a full-time school. And I remember
Yeah.
being part of
Yeah.
starting that school, and people were like, who would do this? And like, who would send their kid to a full-time school of just soccer and academics? And I'm like, honestly, my response was like, if you're asking that question, then your child is not the
No.
1% kid that wants to do it. Like we had soccer junkies, like kids that just
Right.
played
Yeah.
soccer all the time, and
Yeah.
they loved it. And
Yeah.
it was like, if you had to ask yourself that question, then it was fine. It wasn't for everybody. We only had like 19 kids in the first class.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think, I think it's appropriate, but I think you have to be able to be exposed to all sports, but you just have to have your priorities in order of where you are. And it's okay from season to season to change your priorities. Like you're not just pigeonholed as a basketball player for the rest of your life. You could say, man, when I was 10, I loved basketball, so I did it more. Now I'm 11, and I think I'm going to focus a little bit more on soccer. And now that bucket gets filled a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think oftentimes, especially early, where I'll hear parents, like, oh, the kid could be 7 or 8 years old, right? And they're like, oh, like, they quit soccer. And it's like, who says they can't come back at 10 years old and start playing again, right? Like, things are
Absolutely.
gonna, so I think being open to that. I want to shift a little bit now to your role as a coach and just roles as coaches in regards to team culture. And when you think about every level that you've coached at, my guess, or I'd love to hear from you of like that constant and consistency around team culture and how important that is and what you do personally to help set that team culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think I look at like why do we get our kids involved in sport,
Mhm.
right? Of course, we want them to learn the skills and we want them to have sort of this physical like component, but at the same time, we want the life lessons to kind of come out of sport. And some of those things can be leadership and teamwork and resiliency and dealing with a little bit of adversity with winning and losing. And I would say no matter what level I played at, like a lot of that is still the same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I mean, when you're looking about trying to develop team culture, it's changed in a little bit of like the dynamic of what's important to people. But at the
yeah.
end of the day, I think when people, I've only been involved in team sport, aligning them behind like a mission or like
Hmm.
kind of a vision that they can't achieve on their own. And the moment that it's a lofty enough kind of goal or mission that you're joining into a team, an organization, a college team, whatever it is, like the moment that they realize, okay, I wouldn't be able to do that on my own, like
Yeah,
that brings the collectiveness and cohesiveness together. And those are the type of team cultures that I like to build, are ones that are really built on mutual respect and kind of commonality of like, hey, no matter what your background is, where you're from, it doesn't matter. Like what we're trying to do is we're going to try to go achieve, X, Y, and
yeah,
Z, whatever we put our minds to. And a lot of times it's beyond winning a trophy
yeah,
because at some point the season might turn and you realize you're never going to win the trophy. And you could be, you could be 1 month into the season, two
yeah,
months into the season. So it's beyond that. It's bigger. It's more visionary. And when we talk about the vision and the mission, then it has to be aligned behind a set of core values, right? So that we all understand how we're supposed to behave and how we're supposed to work with one another, and how we're supposed to act. And I think that really kind of brings team cultures together. And I would say it's even, and that can be scaled at any level. Um, for like, if I give you an example, like a team culture for maybe a U10 team would be
right.
like, hey, at the end of the year, hey, we're really about teamwork and leadership. And that's what we want to instill in our kids this year. And, so at the end of the season, we want every kid to have scored a goal and we want every kid to have led a team warm up.
Yeah,
And okay, so then now they know. Like, imagine going into the last two games of the year and they know that BJ and Jason haven't scored a goal. Like, they're all going to work together to try to get us a goal. And like, that's what you want to do. And it could be as simple as that for 10-year-olds,
right.
all the way to when you're dealing with a
Yeah,
group of professional players, like trying to get them aligned behind, something really, uh, really big and really lofty.
yeah. It's just staying with that, a little bit talking about goal setting. And one of the things that PCA talks about in our coach workshops is effort-based goals versus results-oriented goals. And so you really focus on the process. Talk about like how that integrates into your coaching philosophy. Talk about how that's still, even at the highest level, in the MLS or the national team, the importance of focusing on the process versus just the result.
Yeah, so perfect. I'll give you maybe an anecdotal story. I'll give you a better
Yeah,
idea on how we do it, but it's exactly what we look for. So we are in a results-oriented business. No way we cut it. So when we last year in 2025, Nashville soccer had never won a trophy, but also there had never been a professional sports trophy won in the state of Tennessee. And so that's what I was getting at, like something a little bit bigger than just pursuing a trophy. And so what we did as a team, we collectively came and said, we want to be the first professional sports franchise in the state of Tennessee to win a trophy. Now, you can say that, and so now you have to go down to like what are these sort of milestones or these effort type of things to get to that end result. And so we literally created a wall in our video room, and any first that we had throughout the year, we celebrated in the next team meeting. So that could be your first goal of the season. That could be the first corner kick goal. That could be the first
yeah,
come from behind win. It could also be the first blown lead, or it doesn't have to be all the positives because you can learn these lessons from maybe things that create this adversity. So, the first red card, the first time we had to play down a man, what lessons did we learn? So, and it just became kind of just stacking firsts and stacking first. And it was a nice simple reminder of the mission that we were on, which was to be the first team to do it. But we had to constantly remind ourselves of these little firsts that built this milestone. And fortunately, at the end of the year, we were able to win the US Open Cup trophy,
yeah,
which then became the first professional sports trophy. So, but that was a 10-month process of literally like, note cards with sticky, and the guy who achieved it would put it on the wall, and we would talk about it and really kind of refocus us in a almost weekly, every 3 to 7 days way of like, what are we trying to accomplish here? What are we trying to accomplish here? And um, that's, I thought, kind of worked. That was just an anecdotal sort of example of like how we stayed focused on the process, and also the little milestones you need to hit to get your ultimate goal, because sometimes the goal can feel so far away.
yeah,
And after maybe a few things, you realize like, man, like this goal might not be achievable.
right.
And I think I've been involved in other situations where the goal's been set so low that like all of a sudden you achieve it and you're like, well, what's next? You're like, okay, man, like where are we going from here? So it is a balancing act, and you got to kind of figure out like more
Yeah,
focused on the milestones and the processes to reach that end result.
yeah. And I think a big part of that process is that learning. And so I want you to talk a little bit about um, as a coach in like game situations. I think we see this a lot, especially at the youth level and even probably at all levels, right? But just maybe like a too much coaching from the sideline from the coach. I mean, we're not going to talk about coaching from the sideline from parents right now, but I just want to focus on coaches and sometimes that over coaching and almost like joysticking, and like what is your advice to coaches on what they should be doing on the sideline during games, and then when are the opportunities for those teachable moments, and how you balance those two things of what you need to teach in the moment versus, hey, we're going to talk about this sometime else.
I think, um, first of all, I think you have to really restrain yourself and like, can you just be quiet for maybe the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, right? There's already a lot of stress in the beginning of a game. People are nervous, whatever. A lot of players have been given information from a lot of different people, whether that was the parent car ride or in our world, social media, and, everyone's got an opinion. And so they're flooded with all of this information. So almost like, how do we simplify it and keep it as calm as possible? And then after the first bit of time, the game kind of becomes the game, and everybody feels like you're playing the sport that you already know how to do. Um, for me, I think there's times of intervention are more for like can it be an individual correction if somebody's really doing something that needs to be corrected, or if you really need to sort of help try to boost confidence and catch them being good.
Yeah,
Like those are some elements. Um, I think especially at the youth side, like I think there's trying to find one or two intervention moments where maybe you need to work on the team structure and that type of thing. But uh, you're observing for trends. And that's the thing that you're looking for, or is this a trend that's occurring? So if you just intervene every single time, like who knows if it worked or didn't work? Like you might have a basketball play that you drew up and it didn't work the first time, but like how do you know it's not going to work the second time, third time, fourth time, or fifth time, right? Maybe if you ran it three or four times and it didn't work, now you have to make this intervention, but you have to let it go a little bit. Um, and for me, like that's where we have a process where we basically call it like at the after a game, the next day, we just do reflect, refine, plan, and then we perform again. And so, somebody's in jobs that sort of take some notes and be a note taker to remember because it's an emotional thing and you don't really remember. And I always joke because I'm like, the eyewitness account is typically the worst account. And I'm sure there's anybody, if there's an attorney on here, they'll tell you that's the worst. That's the worst witness of a crime is the eyewitness because they didn't remember. It's never how
Right.
they exactly remember. And that's how I look at the head coach lens. Like you are emotional and you're like, man,
Right.
that I go back and look at the video. I'm like, wow, that wasn't anywhere near what I thought it was actually going to look like. So you try to refrain from making comments or opinions until a little bit of time to decompress. And then you reflect it, you refine what you want to do, you plan how you're going to practice it more, and what you need to do. And then you go back out and you perform again. And you just keep this learning loop over and over and over again, and you'll continually make progress.
Yeah. How do you create an environment where mistakes are driving learning and people aren't afraid to make mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes from modeling the behavior, right? It's honestly, I look at it as you want to create an environment in your training environment uh, that lends itself to that. And a lot of that comes to the way you, your coaching staff, your supports, that whoever you have around react.
Yeah.
And that's very much. And I think I don't know where I saw this video. I think it was a dive, like a swimming diving
Yeah.
video. And if the person went off the diving board and messed up, all of their fellow divers would applaud, right? And like they would, and you're like, why would you ever applaud the mistake? And it's like, hey, because they were brave enough to go try this dive, and it's crazy. You're doing five somersaults and spins and all sorts of stuff. And you're like, it's not easy, and you're probably going to fail like 100 times. But hey, we're encouraging you. So little, like even just little cultural things like that of like, hey, get up, do the next play, move on to the next play versus the heavy criticism. You start to get those people to understand that it's okay to make mistakes and that type of, that type of environment. But a lot of it comes down to emotional reactions, right?
Yeah.
Emotional reactions. If somebody sees a poor emotional reaction to something that they did, they're not going to do it again.
Right. Yeah. I want to talk about just we talked about culture and sort of like that trust building and I want to hear from you. You know, you talked about, hey, I was on the team and then 6 months later I'm coaching and then as you're working your way up, right? Like I'm sure as you're going into new situations, people are like, okay, like, what does this guy know about soccer coming into our team? How did you build trust with players and how did you make them like understand sort of like where you were coming from, your viewpoint, your experience, and how that could help them? So talk about that process of building trust at each level of the coaching that you've done.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's like building any type of relationship, whether that's relationships with your children, whether friends, partners, whatever. Um, I believe at any level of sport, if you can help a player improve, they're usually open-minded to it. And
Mhm.
but you have to be able to develop that sort of relationship with them. And for me, it's always been about one-on-one communication, small group communication, and letting them know that I'm here and I care about them. And it doesn't always have to be that you have to dig into their personal life and create there's still a professional balance to it. But I think empathy, I think compassion, I think meeting them where they're at in terms of where they are in their careers or where they are trying to develop, and just saying, hey, what do you need help in? That's my
Yeah,
job is to help you, to teach you, to help educate you, right? And so what do you need help in? And I think once people understand like, oh, this person's here to kind of support me, uh, then you build that relationship. And it takes time. It doesn't happen in one day. It takes time. But if you constantly show this, how do I say it, like an initiative on the
yeah,
coach's end to help this person improve, I think once they connect with you, that now you have a really strong bond.
Yeah.
with that player or with that group of players, or now obviously with the team. Um, and I laugh because I think you can connect with people when you go a little bit deep with them, and you can ask them like, "Hey, why do you play this sport that you do?
Yeah.
Like what drives you, right?" Like, and listen, sometimes in the professional world, you'll get like people telling me money, fame, but a lot of
Right.
times it comes down to family. I want to see my kids play, those type
Yeah.
of things. Like, or I want to move up a level and I want to go play Champions League soccer. So just kind of understanding these little things that make them tick, as coaches, like, hey, if that's their dream, then I look at my purpose in life as like, how do I caretake this person's dream? Right? It's not my job to tell them if they can or they can't do that. My job is just to give them as much of my effort and much of my experience to help them try to achieve their dream.
That's awesome. What we've talked about building relationships, building trust. We've talked about parents, coaches, the athlete. One group that we haven't talked about yet is officials, and some some advice. Like, how do you treat officials? How do you see your relationship when the game starts with the official? And what advice can you give to coaches? And how can we also make sure that parents on the sidelines at youth games, there's a referee shortage in our country, like how to turn it down a little.
I think these people are humans. They are, and at the same time, they're professionals. They're working hard to do what they do the same way we do. And I try to treat them the same way I would treat a player, the same way I would treat a staff member, a coworker, with absolute respect. Am I 100% perfect all the time? No, I don't think any of us are. But like, I have great intention and they are critical pieces to our ecosystem and to our sport to grow, and that's any sport. And like you said, there is a massive shortage. And uh, I've sat on many youth soccer fields, and the behavior to a 14 or 15-year-old boy or girl is just is unacceptable. And I think it's one of the biggest things that we need to address in the country, and I would say probably in all of it. And I'll get another small anecdotal story. Like, I was out running one day on a path outside of Chicago, and I watched a 14-year-old baseball travel game, and there was only one umpire, and he had to run from behind. He couldn't even go from behind home plate anymore. He had to stand behind the pitcher so that he could do all of it. And I went up and I asked him after the game, and I said, "Hey, like, did you get stranded? Like, by any?" He goes, "We don't have enough umpires, so I have to umpire one umpire for a whole baseball game, calling balls and strikes, outs, running
Right.
in the first, trying to cover second, seeing if it's a foul ball down the third baseline." And I'm like, "This is crazy. This is crazy, but this is what happens." And I think, we all have to we all are responsible and accountable for it, but they they are people, right? Right. Like, this is like, if you had your son or daughter's 15-year-old friend over the house, would you yell at them like you're yelling that all of a sudden they put a yellow
Right.
referee jersey on or a striped referee jersey on? Like, they're the same person, and I think they're so critical to the player learning how to love the game.
Yeah.
And again, then as adults, we model the behavior. So now we see players yell at referees like like that's okay. Like, youth sports people yelling at referees because they see mom, dad, or my friend's mom, dad, or whatever it is doing that. And it's not, it's something that I think has to change. I wish I knew exactly how to do it. I try to just do it, obviously by modeling my own behavior to my own children, the people that are around me, and the players that we have, and when I have the opportunity to appreciate what they do.
Yeah. We have about 15 minutes left, so keep getting those questions in if you have them. A couple quick hitters here, some specific to soccer. What age should players start to specialize in certain positions, especially like goalkeepers who may play a totally different position as well?
Oof. I don't know if there's a specific like one answer, like it's 12.
Yeah,
My opinion, it's probably as you kind of creep into this like starting
yeah,
teenage year. Um, and then there's going to probably be another shift. And I think girls and boys are a little bit different because puberty hits at a different point.
yeah,
But then there's going to be kind of another shift to it. But when we're talking about position specific, you're probably looking at somewhere right around that 12 into early teenage years.
okay. What resources have been most valuable for you when trying to expand your knowledge on the game and new tactics and coaching strategy?
I'm a big proponent, and I know a lot of sports don't have this, and soccer does, but the coaching licensing program, um, I think has been tremendous. Back in the day, we had the NSCAA, we had U.S. Soccer, we still have U.S. Soccer, and I preface that with, I don't think this license, when you get it, it means that you're a good coach or you're a bad coach. I don't think this license, when you get it, means that you can absolutely coach professional. And if you don't have the license, you can't. Like, I don't think it qualifies you like for anything more than it gives you a network. It puts you in an environment with a lot of different people from different backgrounds, with a lot of different ideas about the game. And the more times you can get in and around people talking about the game, and whether it's just in a classroom or drinking a beer or whatever, those are some of the best dialogues that I've had in my career. And I'm someone I started all the way at the bottom of the licensing because, again, I wasn't a high level player, so I started at the bottom. And I try to take something almost every year. I try to find an opportunity to do professional development that way, that puts me in with just a room of different coaches.
What do you look for when hiring, and then your relationship with assistant coaches, and how do you empower them to thrive in their role?
Yeah, I mean, I know this sounds a little bit cliche, but the first thing is, do I think the person's a good person? And that's first and foremost. And in our world where we are right now, we have to work together, I don't know, many hours a day, many hours a week, and you want to be around good people, and good character, more ethically, those type of things. So I think that's first and foremost a value piece before you can tell me how much you know, and how what an expert you are. Then how we sort of give ownership is we try to give very clear roles and responsibilities for the coach. And I mean that by things that they're going to own in terms of uh, areas on the field, whether that's working with defenders, whether that's working with attackers, whether that's different offense, defense, set pieces. So each person's going to have like an ownership of that. They're going to have to present it. They're going to have to come up with it. But then what we do is we also assign players to the coach.
Hmm.
So now that coach is responsible. And, like in the NFL, it's going to be like kind of position, like that's kind of like your positional coach.
Yep.
I wouldn't necessarily do that like we wouldn't necessarily say it's always positional,
Yeah.
but hey, you have these five or six guys. It's your job to check in with them, do individual video sessions with them, almost track your contact time uh,
Hmm.
with them. And then that way we're very conscious that no matter who you are on our team, we have a saying that it doesn't matter what your role is, your status is the same. And so every player, 1 to 31, some guys play every minute of a game, some guys don't play 1 minute in 10 months. But they're communicated the same way by a coaching staff, that they should never walk out of our facility after a year and be like, I never talked to the coaches once. Um, so they're held accountable to do that. So from an individual level, maybe a collective, like small group level, and then a bigger impact on what we're doing as a field level.
Awesome. I feel like be a good person is just like a good, if everybody could just do that, we'd be probably in a little better spot. But
Yeah, and you check with people you trust, and you do that. But yeah, it's a big starting point for me.
what's the best piece of advice you received that allowed you to go on this journey from being a youth coach all the way up now to coaching the national team, coaching the MLS? What's one of the best pieces of advices that you received during that journey?
Yeah, I think it's not like an exact quote, but I worked with a mentor at the Philadelphia Union Academy, um, who basically said you have to don't worry about your next. He's basically saying you never worry about your next job, never worry about anything else. If you are just doing a really good job in the environment that you're in, you'll like things will happen, and progress will be made. And that I think has really helped me, like not getting caught up in job titles, not getting really caught up in job descriptions. I never cared if I was called the first assistant, the second assistant, the third assistant, the strategy analyst. It didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was that the tasks and the roles and responsibilities I was given, I tried to do at the highest level that I could. And that's still the same right now. That doesn't change. It's not like I think that's been built into me, and I think that's what's helped me um when people maybe evaluate you to bring you onto their staff or go into a different environment. I think that's what has helped a lot versus always looking to the next thing. Like I never thought coaching at the U.S. men's national team was an option based upon where my background was. Like people are like, was that your goal? I'm like, that I would never thought like until I got maybe to a certain point, like then you start there. But no, if I look back to 2003 when I'm coaching at Ursinus College, no, like I'm being completely honest. Like I probably would have told you that I wanted to be a Division I men's soccer coach, right? And then you get to a different way, and then your career goes in a different path. So not getting caught up too much in like where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? I'm not a big I'm not a big proponent of that, to be honest. I'm saying, how can I do the best job today in the role and responsibility that I was given, and how can I be really good at it, and how can I keep getting better and improving in different areas?
Um, Back to a little bit of a World Cup here, and I know when you were coaching with the national team, we had players playing all over the world. So you were traveling around, seeing them. What have you found in other countries in their youth infrastructure from a soccer standpoint that we could learn from that would really help things in the US?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I think for us is being comfortable in whatever culture you want to create, right? So like you can go to Germany and they have a methodology on how they want to develop players, and that might not even just be the whole country of Germany. That could mean at Dortmund, this is the way they want players to be, and they have a culture on how they develop them. And maybe you could go to Bayern Munich and it's a different way, or then you go to Holland and they have a whole different way, and then you go to England and there's a whole different way. And I think for us, coming here to America, we are obviously a huge melting pot of so many different cultures. Um, but I also think at the same time, like we have to kind of like clubs have to create like their own one. Like what is their own way of that they want to play? They want to develop players, their values, their mission, and be super comfortable in it, not trying to copycat somebody else or do something else, just being true to who you are and believing in how you want to build player development. Because that's what I've seen when you look around Europe, like people are like, oh, it's a European way. I'm like, Europe's huge. Like I can tell you the way they develop players in France, the methodology that they use, and it's tremendous. If you look how many players could are French background playing in the World Cup right now, it's not the same as the way they think about and develop players in Holland. And both can be right, and both can produce great players and great people.
Yeah,
But it has to be what's fit to you, and it could be geographic around our country, right?
right.
Like you could be from New Jersey, where I'm
Yeah,
from, and it could be a totally different way of developing players and playing than maybe in, LA, Los Angeles, California. And because the cultures are different. So they have to be unique and they have to be authentic.
yeah, yeah. One question that came in leading up to this webinar, um, for players that maybe are like going into high school, right? They're making that transition from middle school to high school, and like they might be on the edge. Like, what are some things that what advice would you give to that freshman player individually for them to work on to give them the best opportunity to make a team? Like things that they can control, that they can work on. What are some of those things you would tell them?
I think it starts with having a real honest conversation with yourself as to what are you good at. Every player is good at something, right? Like they're good at something.
Yeah,
I've never seen a player that would make a high school team that no one can tell me what their strength was. They might have one, two, or three strengths. And what you have to do is say, okay, I am good at this, and this is how what I'm going to do on my team. And I almost call it like being a star in your own role. And so, like,
yeah,
what is that role that you're going to take on based around the strengths and just focus on those things? And I think a lot of times, uh, I might get in not trouble, but like this can be sometimes controversial, but people tell me that they want to be well-rounded. And I look at
yeah,
times people being well-rounded as like you're kind of average at everything. And and that's
yeah,
okay. Like that fits places too. But like when you're making a team and you're building like a team with positions, you want positions to be really good at something. And so I think it's about what are you really good at and accentuating it. So if you've got an unbelievable right foot that crosses a ball, well, then go play a position. Don't worry about developing your left foot or don't spend so much time doing that. Go from good to very good to elite with your right foot crossing crossing the
yeah,
ball.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important. It's not to neglect the other areas of the field, but if you're looking for like a specific, like if I'm going to go out and work at something and I've got an hour because I want to make my high school team, I would figure out what I'm good at and move the good needle to very good.
Yeah. Okay, great. We're coming towards the end here. Obviously, Positive Coaching Alliance, it says it in our name, positive coaching. Sometimes people see that and they think it's soft or everybody gets a trophy or not competitive. What does positive coaching mean to you?
Honesty. Honesty, and I think that's how you help someone the best, right? And honesty is, if they're doing a great job, it is absolutely okay to tell somebody that they're doing a great job. And if they need to improve on something, I think it's absolutely fine if it's done in the appropriate way, in a skillful way, and in the appropriate environment to tell someone that they need to improve. But I think honest feedback for me is what positive means, because it's clear. It's clear to help that person grow and develop, and it just has to be done. And I think a lot of us and all of us in our careers, we just have to become better at providing positive or constructive feedback and know how to do it in the right way and learn how to do it in the right way. But for me, that's what positive coaching is being good at communicating and in a very honest and authentic way.
Great. So I'm going to ask you a really tough question now. You and I have known each other, I think, since we were in fifth or sixth grade, playing basketball. Who was the better basketball player when we were growing up? I think I want the honest feedback there.
Oh, 100% you.
Okay, good. Okay.
100% you. I had zero basketball skills, but I would set picks for you and I would rebound if you missed and I'd kick it back out to you. But you were someone who could dribble, shoot. You could do all the real basketball things. I probably just did the try hard I did the try hard basketball things, which was, hey man, if you're good, I'm cool with it. I'm going to set picks for you to shoot more three-pointers.
We're good. We got the video clip that we needed from this whole thing, but
100%.
BJ, it was a absolute pleasure. I couldn't be more proud of, we go way back, but just seeing your success over the years and the way you talk about it, you are you talked a lot about modeling, and I think many coaches are looking for that model of what type of coach they can become. And oftentimes we want to look towards the highest levels, national teams, MLS coaches, and to have somebody like you on the sidelines showing that is amazing. So I want to thank you for providing that all your insight today. I'm excited that hopefully we can do more together, and just want to thank you for being here today.
No, I appreciate it. Listen, this is an easy one to join. I believe in what you guys do. A lot of it resonates with me, so I hope it came across authentic because I truly, I love the work that you guys do and from your leadership.
Awesome. Prediction for Friday's U.S. game?
Oh, I mean, I'm going US. Yeah, I
Any
think it's a
score? Got a
challenging
score?
game. Australia is really good. Australia is good. They're organized. They compete very hard. They've had a consistent player group, but I think the crowd in Seattle. So Seattle's one of the best soccer environments in the country. And they've been starving for a U.S. men's national team game for a long time. And Seattle has an amazing history of soccer in the Pacific Northwest that goes way, way back. And I think that stadium is going to be rocking. Obviously, the team is confident, and I think you'll see I think you'll see a hard game, a really competitive game. But I think the U.S. comes out on top.
Awesome. BJ, thanks so much for your time. Thanks everybody for joining us today. In the chat, you'll see Nashville SC's social handles, you'll see PCA social handles, and also PCA and ESPN are teaming up to take back sports. So click on that link, take the parent pledge, and do what you can to make sure that your child has a positive youth sports experience. BJ, thanks again.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.